Okay, and hello and welcome to the final video in this series on how to answer the different questions on the Cold War paper. We're now going to look at the explain the importance question. So that's question 3. First things first, for this one, you're going to have a choice of 3. So I'm just show you there an example. You need to pick 2 of them. So there's one that you don't do, you pick the 2 that you want. Okay. And make sure that's really clearly signaled to the examiner which ones you've picked. In terms of so I can get my annotation tool. So in terms of what you need to make sure you're doing in each answer, we need 2 pure paragraphs, 2 pieces of specific evidence per paragraph as a minimum, and always start your explanation by saying this was important. So this was important in reducing tensions because, or this was important in increasing tensions because, and so on. Or this was important for the development of the Cold War as, and so on. Okay. If in doubt, like I said before with the other explain question, always think about did it lead to tension or not? Now, the key difference between this and question 1, which I get asked quite a lot, like how are they different? Question 1 is asking you to explain how an event leads to 2 consequences of your choice, whereas this one is not asking that. It's asking you to explain why an event was important. So it's very different. Okay. So in your explanation, you don't want to say this led to, or you want to say this was an important or this was important for the development of the Cold War because this was important in increasing tensions. So just bear in mind that the question is phrased slightly differently, although the skills and kind of exam technique is going to be similar when you're writing your answer. Okay, so if I'm looking at the questions, I'm just going to answer one of these. I'm not going to do 2 of them. So if I was in the exam, I probably would do, looking at these questions, I'd probably do number 1 and number 3. The arms race stuff is quite boring. So I'd probably do number 1 and number 3. Let's do number 1 today. So the importance of the Marshall Plan for relations between East and West. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I've done my revision. So I'll put this on because obviously I'm a teacher and I haven't done the revision. But in particular, we're looking at the Marshall Plan. So as part of the Marshall Plan, we've got a few different things. So we've got the fact that he's given money to countries. So that Truman is giving money to countries in Western Europe. And then Stalin obviously calls that dollar imperialism. And then Stalin creates in response to that Comecon, which, let me check the date, I believe is 1949, I'm going to say. Yes, 1949. Okay. And then my key piece of evidence there is the fact that Bulgaria's trade goes up in response. So Bulgaria's trade with the countries in the Warsaw Pact goes up. Okay. So in terms of this then, in terms of my plan, I'd probably go for something like this. So I'm probably going to say it increased tensions in the short term as it led to a division in Europe. So the division in Europe is in reference to the wealthy western part, that again, all the money, and the poor eastern part under the Soviet sphere of influence. My second paragraph will probably be the fact that it leads to Comecon. So brackets, a rival organization, which further influences tension. Right. So notice how I'm talking about tension and I'm then supplementing it with a key point. So Comecon and then here division in Europe. Okay. Right. So in terms of the write-up, then it should look a little bit like this. So I'm saying one reason why the Marshall Plan 1947 was so important was that it led to a divided and fractured Europe. For example, so in fact, let me say, let's say, so the specific number is $12.7 billion over 16 countries. The Marshall Plan, introduced by President Truman, that's my specific evidence, led to Wow, where's the dollar symbol here? $12.7 billion of financial aid being given to countries, to 16 countries in Western Europe. Okay. In exchange for their loyalty to capitalists, to their loyalty and promise to communist. Okay, so in terms of what I've done so far, we've got our point, we've got our evidence. And notice how I've gone far beyond the two pieces of evidence. So here, look, I've got Truman, that's one. I've got $12.7 billion, that's two. 16 countries. And then I've got exchange for their loyalty. So technically 4 different pieces of specific evidence that I've included there. You want to basically be doing 1 or 2 sentences of evidence. I'm then going to say something like, this was important as it led to a split in Europe between the wealthy Western European countries who were receiving this financial aid, and the poorer countries, and the countries in the Soviet sphere of influence, who were deprived of America's financial resources. After all, so that's, most people would write that and they'd probably stop. I'm trying to get the highest mark, so I'd probably go further. As a result, this increased tension, or no, in fact, after all, Stalin called the policy of the Marshall Plan an example of dollar imperialism, which was seeking to divide Europe, thereby increasing the tension between the USA and the USSR, but also between the West, between West Europe. Right, that's that basically. Now I need to do my second paragraph. Right. So then I'm say another reason the Marshall Plan is important. Why do you keep spelling Marshall wrong? What's going on? Typing too fast. So my point is the fact that it was so important was getting to the creation of a rival organization in the medium to long term. So you can divide it up into like short term and long term consequences. So not consequences, short term and long term importance. So one reason why the Marshall Plan was important in the short term was it led to divide and fracture Europe. So I might put that in actually. In the short term, that's a helpful tip as well. If you're struggling, just think short term, long term. That led to regional violence, medium to long term. In 1949, in response to Marshall Plan, Stalin created Comecon, which stood for Council of Mutual Economic Assistance. This body encouraged countries in the Soviet sphere of influence, oh gosh, to trade with one another. For example, Bulgaria's trade went from 10%. I know the Warsaw Pact it isn't actually created by this point, but it is. The Comecon lasts a number of years. So, for example, Bulgaria's trade with Warsaw Pact countries went from 10% to 90% as a result of Comecon. So now I need to explain why that's important. So first things first, I'm going to mark that in red. This is in blue. It's my evidence. Look at the number of specific pieces of evidence. So we've got 1949, Comecon, we've got Council of Mutual Assistance. We've got countries trading with one another, Bulgaria, got 10 to 9%. Okay, that's the level of detail and specificity you want, guys. Okay, and then this was important or the development of Cold War is it now meant rival economic, which led to a form of economic warfare, which affected much of the world's economy. As a result of this, there was increased tension and increased tension between the USA as they provide essentially the USA as they both try to protect their interests using economic strategies, something like that. So I'm basically saying it's important because it's the first time economic warfare has been used in the Cold War. So it's a turning point in the Cold War. So that's basically it, guys. 2 paragraphs. You can see from there the amount of explanation you need. Like 50 to 60% of your paragraph should be explanation. On this paper for the Cold War, literally, if you can explain and give a couple of pieces of evidence, it's very, very easy to get the highest marks. You just need to make sure you know the content inside and out. Okay. So use this mind map, memorize this mind map, memorize as much of the flashcards as you can as possible, and you should be in a good position. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you in the next video, which will be on how to answer the Weimar Germany questions.